And over time, like it came to the point where my mind was almost expecting to feel bad an hour, 2 hours after a meal, right? And so, yeah, and it came with gas and constipation, bowel movements that were not optimal, and da da da. So that was kind of the typical constellation of symptoms I was experiencing. And I would say that to some extent, my joint pain was very much gut related as well.
Welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. I'm your host, Lee Brandon. This work started for me several decades ago when I started to see the impact I could make on people, helping them to identify the root cause of their health problems that no doctor could figure out, including serious back, knee, shoulder and neck injuries, acne and eczema issues, severe gut health problems, even helping couples get pregnant after several IVF treatments had failed. And it really moves me to be able to help people in this way. And that is why I do what I do and why we have this show. In this week's episode of the Radical Health Rebel podcast, I'm joined by fellow CHEK practitioner Robin Malmasson for a deep and insightful conversation on important factors to achieve good gut health. Gut health is a hot topic these days, but there's still a lot of confusion around what actually causes gut issues and, more importantly, how to truly heal them. In this episode, Robin and I unpack some of the most misunderstood aspects of gut health, including why quick fixes like probiotics or low FODMAP diets often miss the mark. We dive into the real root causes of gut dysfunction, from disrupted circadian rhythms and poor light hygiene to the overlooked role of emotions, fasting, detoxification, and even our relationship with the sun and vitamin D. Robin shares his unique insights on the correct order of operations when addressing gut issues and why getting this sequence wrong can leave people stuck in cycles of chronic symptoms. If you're ready to go beyond the surface and understand what it really takes to build a healthy gut from the inside out, you won't want to miss this conversation. Robin Malmasson, welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Lee. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, Robin. And to kick things off, could you share a little bit about your professional and educational background? And could you also share some of your own health struggles as well?
Sure. I'm actually glad that you ended the question this way because they are inextricably linked. In that, from as far back as I can recall, I've always been a tired kid when I was young. And basically, roughly around the age of 16, 17, 18 is when I really started to want to look better. So in terms of my health journey, it's really started with this background of issues, plus my desire for kind of superficial aesthetic goals. And so this is how I started resistance training. And this is what led me to start diving into this world, first off, of fitness and other things. Now, with that said, my formal education initially is as an engineer. So I'm more coming from a scientific background, studied all the common subjects like mathematics, thermodynamics, quantum mechanics, classical mechanics, all that stuff, and eventually became a computer engineer. But meanwhile, I was suffering with my own issues, and it went from simply fatigue to joint issues to chronic gut health issues, anxiety, insomnia, or things like that. And so during my spare time, as I was working as an engineer, I would just research, and experiment with things, which is a very important point, not just staying in theory, but actually trying things in practice. And obviously, I bumped my head against several walls, trying different methods that did not work for me, not necessarily because the method was wrong, but because it was not right for me right now. And long story short, 1 year into my work as a computer engineer, I had a depression after my summer vacation. And I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to be doing this anymore. And basically in my spare time with my research, my passion and interest for this field, let's call it health and fitness, grew steadily. And because I've always liked teaching, even when I was more in science, I was mentoring younger students and I love teaching. The idea of becoming some kind of a therapist, of educator, of a coach in the health field became obvious. And so it's 1 year later that I quit my job as an engineer and ended up enrolling in the CHEK Academy, which is how I met you, Lee. And so that's been my formal education in this field, but I don't want to dismiss all the countless hours spent researching online, listening to podcasts like this one, reading books, watching conferences, which has really allowed me to build like a really broad understanding of how things should go, or like how things work in a more, like, say, holistic way, in that I always ask myself the question, why does it make sense right now? And that's really helping me to figure things out for my clients now, because now I'm working as we can call that a health coach. And like basically my whole background in science is really helping me as well to decipher many of the things that we can hear in the health field as well.
So one of the things you said was you didn't feel like it was right for you to be an engineer anymore. Why do you think that was?
So for several reasons. One of them that was certainly a big one was the lack of meaning in my work. I felt like a cog in the wheel. And when I was looking at my boss or senior employees, I was like, I don't want to be like that in a few years. So that's one criteria, like one reason. Another reason would be simply that I did not like the idea of being stuck in front of a computer and not being free, basically. There was really something that it was going against the grain of my soul. That's the best way I can describe it. It was just like really against my nature. And it just like, I felt empty inside. And I knew that conversely, the summer vacation I took right before the depression hit me, I was spending time outdoors. I was learning how to practice Qigong and sharing it with a friend. So I had this kind of teaching experience, and I was just living the best life. And the contrast between the two was really like, oh, that's why I need to make things change.
And would you say it was the reason why you kind of went down the health route was basically motivated by your kind of own health history? Would that be right?
For sure. Initially, especially, yeah. I was like, there was something inherently like wrong with being tired all the time, having gut issues all the time. And especially bear in mind that, so it was in my early 20s, like late teens, early 20s. And at this age, like most of my friends were on average not taking care of their health at all. Some were either not exercising at all or over exercising for like aesthetic reasons. Many were partying all the time and da 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 da. Whereas in contrast, at this age, I was already going to bed at like 9, sometimes earlier, because I was tired. I was trying to eat healthy, like with the best definition of healthy I had back then. I was exercising, I was meditating, and despite all these things, I was still experiencing my symptoms. And so there was this deep frustration when I was comparing myself with my friends at this time, and which really was covering a sense of sadness. It's like, it's unfair. But that certainly motivated me to figure things out. And there is another trait about me, which is that I don't like not knowing. So it's like, I need to get to the bottom of things, because I don't like being left in this kind of, I don't really know what's going on. And so that's another fuel that propelled my search.
Yeah, so we're going to talk in detail a bit more about gut health, but what was the kind of gut health issues that you tended to suffer from yourself?
Yeah, so I'll share more like the symptoms. I don't know if you could put one word on it, but obviously the anxiety had a gut health component, because as we know, the gut health and the brain, like they affect each other. So anxiety was one, but a big one was I just looked and felt bloated most of the time, like lower abdominal bloating, even though I was not overweight. I looked like I had excess weight. in the lower abdomen. And whatever I ate, I did not feel good. I never had this sense of I'm satiated, but I feel light. It was like, and over time, like it came to the point where my mind was almost expecting to feel bad an hour, 2 hours after a meal. Right. And so, yeah, and it came with gas and constipation, bowel movements that were not optimal, and da da da. So that was kind of the typical constellation of symptoms I was experiencing. And I would say that to some extent, my joint pain was very much gut related as well. And I had, which was not as big of a deal for me, but it's still relevant. I had a pretty dry skin as well, which those things pretty much cleared up once I improved my gut health.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like, the symptoms that you mentioned. If you went to see, say, a medical doctor, they would say, oh, you've got irritable bowel syndrome.
Which, nowadays.
Which, again, as we know, doesn't actually tell you anything, right? It's just a group of symptoms lumped together. But it also sounds a little bit, the symptoms that you mentioned sounds to me a little bit like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Again, may or may not have been.
I worked with a practitioner at some point, and he said like that's what I had. And after researching it myself, I was like, yeah, that sounds like it. And that's why I went through a period of reducing the FODMAPs and things like that to alleviate these symptoms while working on the root cause, which is an important point, because it's not just about removing what triggers you. It's like, why is it triggering you in the first place? So yeah, I've definitely had that.
Yeah, that makes sense. In your experience, what would you say are the key factors that contribute towards gut health issues? Amanda spent 19 years battling severe IBS, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. Her life was ruled by public toilets, and she avoided holidays for fear of flare-ups. Doctors offered no solutions, just endless Imodium. After working together, Amanda discovered the root causes of her symptoms, and in just 3 months, she was IBS-free. She even booked her first holiday with her husband, a dream come true. If you're struggling like Amanda, visit www.bodycheck.co.uk to schedule your consultation. Let's find the root cause and get your life back.
So it's kind of a rabbit hole a little bit. And for that, I will start with kind of a principle, which is that stress and digestion are what we call antagonists, meaning that just like I cannot inhale and exhale at the same time, my body cannot stress out and digest at the same time. And so when we understand that, we're like, oh, so basically anything that causes stress can potentially harm my digestion. Now, obviously, it's not the only cause. I will get to that. But when we consider the fact that most people are pretty much in a constant mild to moderate state of fight or flight or stressful state, because like society, because we were never taught how to manage the mind, because whatever reason, like basically the more we are in resistance to life, the more we are in a not peaceful state. So that's one big kind of worms already. Like anything that stresses the body can lead to digestive issues. And especially I've found more, if we want to be more specific, like issues with stomach, which then kind of cascades into issues with the pancreas, the liver, and so on and so forth. Then I would say like basically a combination of nutritional deficiencies and a high toxic burden. So again, the more stressed the body is, the more we need nutrients to kind of compensate and meet this demand. But unfortunately, we are also less fed than ever before, or like less nourished. We are overfed but undernourished. And unfortunately as well, we live in a world that's more and more toxic, which at some point in my life, just the fact of knowing this caused me anxiety, which is not helpful. And I like to remember, because I have clients like that, And I like to remind them that of all the systems of the body, the chief remains the mind. And so if we can manage to cultivate a peaceful mind, whatever else we do, it's already a big win. And the last thing I will mention, because it's a topic I've deeply researched and it's probably one of my favorites, it's everything that goes with circadian rhythm mismatch, and basically our modern relationship with the sun and light in general.
Yeah. I mean, that's quite a big one. And, an episode, as we record this, an episode that came out a few weeks ago, we spoke about that in quite a lot of detail. And what is quite interesting as well, and, we were just having a chat before we started recording, and, we were talking about the lack of sunlight that we get these days, because, well, it would seem, if you believe what you can see with your eyes, that there are things being sprayed in the sky to block the sun. And there are certain, shall we call, leaders of this world who have said we need to block out the sun because otherwise we're all going to burn to death, right?
Yeah.
So obviously that's playing a role. But obviously the other thing, I'm guessing you're talking about as well is that, for instance, the times that we sleep and the ability to get out into nature and actually get the sunshine on our bodies as well.
Yeah, so it's all of the above, and I'm happy to go as deep as you want me to go. But, and I literally made a post yesterday about the connection between skin aging, or so-called skin aging, and sunlight. But yeah, it's the combination, like sun, how to say, because it's such a vast topic. So one big component is what we call the circadian rhythm. And for people to grasp the importance of it, let's picture a busy airport. So a busy airport, obviously there are many planes landing, taxiing, taking off, and so on. Now, the only way that this airport can function smoothly and without any incidents is thanks to the control tower that orchestrates everything. And what the control tower really does is ensuring that the timing is right. So there is no plane landing on the strip when another one is trying to take off. So it's basically a timing thing. And obviously we can very easily imagine what would happen if the control tower was not working, like crashes and so on. So if we go back to the body and look at this analogy, the control tower is basically the circadian rhythm of the whole organism. And when it's off and planes are crashing, so-called, this is what we call inflammation and basically inefficiency in our physiology. So as it relates to gut health, basically all the cells in our body have clock genes, which are basically synced, in theory, synced with our light environment, specifically blue light. And I'm happy to explain why blue light specifically. And they are supposed to be primed for action at certain times of the day and primed for repair at other times of the day. So if we take the example of leaky gut, which is a very common term we hear nowadays, well, the gut is supposed to, like the gut lining is supposed to be replaced every 2 to 3 days if things go well. And one of the things that controls that is the circadian rhythm, because at night, things are supposed to be repaired, whereas during the day, things are supposed to be active and working on their digestive duties. So already we can understand that when the circadian rhythm is off, we slow down gut repair. We also kind of decrease our ability to secrete digestive enzymes at the right time, or maybe bile at the right time from the liver. So that's more like the circadian rhythm component. But then like actual direct sunlight, whether we talk about the infrared wavelength, the red wavelength, the ultraviolet or UV wavelength, they all have specific effects when they are touching the skin, which involve like regulating the immune system, regulating inflammation, regulating the gut microbiome. So it's a really wide topic, which we can go in any direction. But yeah, like in practice, it involves being mindful of the light environment we are in. So it means ideally spending as much time outdoors as possible during the day. And at night, when the sun is not up, we want to minimize the amount of artificial light that we are exposed to. So it could be literally disconnecting our devices. And if it's not realistic, because I still use my devices at night, it means filtering out as much blue light as possible.
Mm. So I've just spent the last 2 weeks teaching courses indoors from the time I wake up in the morning to the time I go to bed. And fortunately, the sun is out now in the UK, so I can actually get out there now. But, obviously, for what you've said, the last 2 weeks has probably not been optimal for me because all I've had access to is artificial light. Yes, I've got blue light blocking glasses that I can wear in the evening, but other than that, I didn't see the sun, right? Apart from I had one day off and it was a little bit sunny on that day. So what you're telling me is I need to get out in the sun today, basically.
Basically, yeah. And actually, it's an interesting use case because many people are in the situation you have experienced in the past couple of weeks. And the question becomes like, okay, I shared what is ideal, but now what is realistic? Because again, I don't want to induce more stress in people. I want to actually empower them. And so what we have to realize is, contrary to how our mind tends to work in a very linear way. The body, especially when we work with light, which is a quantum phenomenon. I don't like to use that word because it's kind of thrown around for marketing purposes, but fundamentally, light is a quantum phenomenon. It was studied like in depth through quantum physics. But the point I'm trying to make is that when we work with light, things work in a non-linear way, meaning that a small input can have exponential results or outputs. And the reason I'm saying that is that, for example, I don't know at what time the sun was rising when you were doing your classes, but even 2 to 3 minutes being outside, staring at the sky eastward is enough to set your circadian rhythm in motion. So that's one thing. Like 2 to 3 minutes, the most important thing is to be consistent, not to be like 20 minutes one time a week and not at all the rest of the week. And the other thing is like, okay, like to what extent can I manipulate the environment I will be working in so that the light is at least less harmful? Because there are two main issues with artificial lighting, which, by the way, sunlight coming through a window is considered artificial lighting as well. But when it comes specifically to screens and LED light bulbs, there are two main issues. One is that they tend to have an excess of blue light, of the blue wavelength, compared to the other colors, and they have literally almost zero red of the red wavelength, red color, and no infrared, except when we were using incandescent bulbs, which is another topic. And same for screens. So the first issue is that there is an excess of blue. The second issue, which is more tied to the circadian rhythm, and again, I'm happy to explain why that matters, is that the amount of blue in those devices, in those bulbs, does not change from hour to hour, as opposed to what our brain expects from how the sun moves in the sky. So if we can slightly shift maybe these, like the screens we use, the bulbs we use, then we can basically reduce the harm that can be done from working so much indoors.
So are you saying you can actually, use some kind of device where you can actually change the amount of blue light coming from devices?
Yes. So when it comes to, I'll start with computers. So it works with both desktops and laptops. There is a software that you can put in the description for the listeners. It's called Iris Tech. And basically the first thing it does is it reduces blue light, which is always good to take. And what it does is it has a mode called the automatic mode, which based on your location, it will adjust the amount of blue light based on where the sun is at in the sky. And it does that automatically. So again, it minimizes the impact of staring at your screen.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, that software was mentioned in a previous episode. I did the trial actually. Maybe I need to get that
Yeah,
back up.
and it has then a night mode for after sunset, which I am always using, which is basically removing all the blue light from the screen. And of course, it takes a little bit getting used to. And of course, if you work in like video editing or graphic design, you can't really do that. You have to have the accurate colors. But if you just read or even watch some YouTube videos for entertainment or education, whatever, which is what I do, it works perfectly. And what I've found, because I recommend that to pretty much all my clients, is there is some resistance at the beginning because I want to enjoy my thing and da da da. But first of all, after a few days, maybe a week, 10 days, they get used to it, so they don't mind watching their favorite show with the screen red. And number two, the sleep quality they derive from that is just worth it. They're like, I don't want to go back.
I mean, just using blue light blocking glasses. I mean, I'm fortunate that I'm someone that's always slept really well. I've never really had a problem with sleep, to the annoyance of other people. But even when I just started wearing blue light blocking glasses in the evening, I could still feel an improvement in my sleep. Whereas I already felt that my sleep was perfect anyway. But then, I'd be waking up in the morning and I'd feel even more refreshed than previously.
And what you are sharing is actually, it's making a good point, because I have many people, and I'm sure you've had this kind of client as well, that say, oh, I feel good, or oh, I already sleep well. And they say that in a way that I don't need your thing. I don't need your recommendation. And there is this, it's kind of this bias that we have as humans, is that we tend to forget that things could be even better. Right. And so you make a good point. I just want to highlight that.
Yeah. And the other thing is as well, is that, you might say to yourself, well, I already feel good, but compared to what? Right?
Exactly. Because, yeah. It's like, it's not an absolute. Like, what does it mean? Yeah.
But also, if you're comparing yourself to the average, right? The average is in a pretty bad state anyway. Right. So if you're good compared to average, which, the average isn't great, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're optimal yourself.
Yeah. Like, I'm a B+.
Yeah.
Like, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
what do you feel are the most common misconceptions when it comes to restoring digestive health?
So I'll share what I observe the most often. It's number one, I think it's probably the biggest. It is the idea that taking away some foods, sometimes foods that are not even problematic, depends on someone's philosophy, is the solution. That's probably the biggest one. Is there is this phenomenon in which we almost believe that a clean diet is one that almost has nothing in it. It's like no diversity. And I've observed that many, many times. And it feeds into the second point I want to make, which is very often things are done out of order. So, like, I've seen people popping probiotics, assuming that it will cure their problem, just like they would pop a pill, right? And when, from my perspective, I'm like, you don't need to address your microbiome just yet. It's like your upper digestive system, like the stomach, the pancreas, that's not working properly. Therefore, you can pop all the probiotics you want, but the issues will come back because you're not digesting you're not digesting your food properly. Therefore, it will keep fermenting and putrefying in your small intestine, and it will keep creating like problematic bacteria and so on. So I would say these are the biggest misconceptions, is like focusing too much on taking some foods away, but that's the end of the protocol, or doing things out of order, which I believe, and I went there, I'm not saying this in a kind of, I'm not pointing fingers, I was there and I have compassion because we do the best we can with our level of awareness and our level of knowledge. But doing things out of order because we don't just understand anatomy and physiology and how the body works.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, again, sometimes I'll take on a client and they're almost expecting me to say, take this probiotic, take this, take that. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. We've got to cover the foundations first, right? And as you know, in the CHEK system, we teach 6 foundation factors. Number 1 being the mind. And that's where I tend to start with all my clients, is the mind. And again, those of you that don't already know, I've got a course for people to do if they want to, really bulletproof their mindset before they start on a health improvement program. It's called Stickability. And again, you can check that in the show notes. Did you know that 92% of people fail to follow through on their New Year's resolutions? That's right. Year after year, most of us start strong and then lose momentum by February. Sound familiar? But what if this year could be different? What if you finally had the tools to make your goals stick? Introducing Stickability, a simple, effective, and affordable program designed to help you overcome the cycle of failed resolutions. In just a short time, you'll learn how to create lasting habits without wasting hours or breaking the bank. This isn't just another plan. It's the solution to finally sticking to your healthy lifestyle goals. Don't let this year be like the last. Head over to stickabilitycourse.com now to enroll. It's affordable, easy to follow, and packed with tools to make 2025 the year that you have the ability to make it stick. So you've got to start with the mind first, and for a number of reasons, but an important aspect that I cover in that course is that you can have the best information in the world. So you could come to someone like me or yourself or like Robin, and you could have the best nutrition plan. You could have the best exercise plan. You could be clear on what's the best times for you to sleep. But if you don't do it because you've got some, let's call it subconscious thing that's stopping you from doing it, or even conscious thing that's stopping you from doing it, the program's not going to work anyway, right? And it goes a lot, obviously the mind goes a lot deeper than that. And then obviously, as we know, breathing is important. And again, we've been discussing, nervous system regulation. That's going to, again, if you learn how to breathe properly, that's going to help with that. Hydration comes next. Again, you can pop all the pills you want, but if you're not fully hydrated, your cells just aren't going to function properly. Mm-hmm. Then you've got the diet, then you've got movement, and then, as we've already spoken about, the circadian rhythm, right? Once you've got all those 6 things in place, then you can start to consider, okay, do I need to support my digestion? Do I need to, enhance my hydrochloric acid so I can break down the foods? Do I need more enzymes, which you might do if you've got a leaky gut syndrome, for instance?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I've found that just to make this case, like some people do, like basically we can get into a situation with gut health issues where it becomes a vicious circle. And so basically, like the most basic vicious circle is I don't produce enough hydrochloric acid, so stomach acid. Therefore, I can't digest my proteins, and it's also impacting my pancreatic enzymes. So I'm not basically absorbing what I eat. Therefore, I either perpetuate or increase my nutritional deficiencies that were leading to the lack of stomach acid in the first place. So we have this vicious circle. And in this kind of situation, it is helpful that on top of all the basic things that you've mentioned and that I always cover with my clients, it can make the journey a lot smoother and more enjoyable in a way for clients to have some supplements that help break the cycle, because otherwise progress will be slow. And again, as you know from creating this course on the mind, some people have expectations that it should be instant. So when you can provide some kind of like intelligent supplementation, not as a crutch, but as a smart thing to insert in the system right now to get out of the vicious circle, it can help with adherence to the program and just results.
Yeah. I mean, I think the term for that is intelligent allopathy, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, absolutely right. If you can't digest your food properly because there's a lack of hydrochloric acid, there are things that you can use to increase either your own production of hydrochloric acid or to have, exogenous hydrochloric acid to help break your food down. But it's
absolutely.
As long as that's done intelligently, then that's all well and good.
Yeah, and when we look at what does it take to produce hydrochloric acid, it's like, well, even if you have all the like ingredients in place, so like chloride, zinc, vitamin B1, even if you have all these, and let's assume that you have enough thyroid hormones to actually produce it, well, if you're stressed out, it will still go against that. So even if you have all the, let's say, like the targeted vitamins and the whatever, but you're still stressed out, then it's like won't work.
Yeah, or even dehydrated, right?
Yeah,
dehydrated is not going to work. So again, you can take all the probiotics you want, and and again, at the right time, that they still can be very useful. But as you were saying, you've got to do it in the right order. You've got to have the foundations in place first. Otherwise, you're probably wasting your money. And that's, I think, possibly why a lot of people find they do supplement protocols and they say, "Oh, well, I've just wasted a load of money." And it probably wasn't the wrong protocol, but as you were saying, it was done at the wrong time in the wrong order. Whereas if you had all those foundations in place first, then you probably would have got the result from it.
That's it. And then what I observe is, because of the way our mind works as humans, like in order to make meaning out of this complex world, we tend to generalize things or put things in the box. And so when we have one or two or more experiences where supplements or like natural approaches don't work, we tend to say, oh, natural doesn't work, like generalize things. And it's like, no, it's just like, in this case, it was not done properly. It doesn't mean that it will never work for no one. But it's just interesting to see how people come to their conclusions, because usually the people coming to me are not what you might call the average person that's in usually really bad shape. Usually the people coming to me are people who have tried things and they already have kind of knowledge from left and right, like from social media and what I've heard and And so, yeah, they have had they've had experience, and sometimes they end up confused. Sometimes they end up resentful. But yeah, it's very common.
And the other important thing is as well on that aspect is that, again, what might work for one person might not work for the next person. Right? It's all got to be very
100%.
individualized, and there is no one size fits all approach. It's got to be very client centered.
100%. Now, like, obviously there are principles that work across the board for all of human biology. But yeah, this is where like interviewing the client, knowing what they tend to eat most, what their psycho-emotional landscape is, and obviously using like questionnaires or some kind of assessment to be like, okay, I can tell that it's actually your stomach specifically that's lacking, or maybe it's your pancreas or whatever. So obviously, like on top of the foundational principles, it's like, what is it that your body is really asking for right now, which is not what your neighbor's body may be asking for.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing you mentioned was about eliminating foods from the diet and over eliminating. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit more on that, or maybe give us an example of where someone might have kind of over eliminated foods from their diet?
Sure. So just as a kind of preface, I don't want to throw any philosophy under the bus. I think in terms, like philosophically speaking, like everybody's right to have their own beliefs. But a common one I see is like not eating enough protein, and particularly animal protein. And some of the reasons that are invoked are it creates acidity in the body, which I'm happy to debunk. Or just like it causes acid reflux, or I feel heavy when I eat it. So again, it's a very common human phenomenon, which we tend to blame the thing outside of ourselves instead of questioning our own responsibility in it. Right? So it's like, instead of saying, what's my part in it? Like, why can't my body consume this food. In this case, it's meat that our ancestors have been consuming for whatever, how long time. Instead of asking this question and basically taking responsibility, we tend to blame the food and take it away. So I took meat because it's the most iconic example, but FODMAPs as well. We can remove FODMAPs like too harshly or for too long, and then it leads to, back to the microbiome, it leads to issues with not enough diversity, not enough fiber, or potentially nutritional deficiencies because it's taking a lot of plant foods out. So, but yeah, like it could be the ketogenic diet. It's like, okay, sugar is bad, therefore, like I take it away. But it's like, why is sugar bad? Like, why can't your body handle that, right? So we don't ask the right questions, and it doesn't mean that the ketogenic diet never works or is not appropriate. It's like I just think that we need to ask the right questions and ask, like, is it right for me right now again?
Yeah. I mean, the FODMAP ones is quite interesting because, what I've come to appreciate is that, if someone's, let's say, bloating is stimulated by eating high FODMAP foods, by reducing or eliminating the high FODMAP foods, it can help reduce symptomology, which
yes,
there's definite benefit to that. What it doesn't do, and I think perhaps you were probably alluding to this, it still doesn't solve the problem, right? It doesn't get
correct.
to the root cause of the problem.
Correct.
And I think some people might have the belief that, not eating high FODMAP foods the rest of their life is going to solve the problem. The problem's still going to be there, right?
Yeah.
If they don't address
it. It's like sweeping it under the rug.
Yeah. So, and again, coming back to kind of what you were saying, if someone doesn't have enough hydrochloric acid in the stomach, if they don't have the enzymes in their gut, then the food's not going to get digested very well. That's going to be harder to absorb the nutrients. It's going to be harder to break down those tissues. Probably going to slow down motility, and it's going to lead to something like, a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Yep.
So by just reducing those foods that trigger the problem isn't going to solve the problem.
No.
And again, it could be mental emotional issue that, again, it could be stress that's slowing down motility. And if those things aren't addressed, and eating a reduced FODMAP diet isn't going to solve your hydrochloric acid problem or your mental stress or whatever it might be.
Exactly. Now, at the same time, I do have compassion for people because when we suffer, and obviously I've been there, the first and foremost thing that we want is to not suffer. So any type of symptom relief, we'll take it. Now, the issue is not this because it's natural, like any animal wants to be free of suffering. The issue is when we stop there, right? It's like, oh, I don't have pain, which is, by the way, it's a broader issue, right? With even musculoskeletal issues, like, oh, I don't have pain, therefore I can go back to my activity. But it's like, no, the body's not ready. So we just make the mistake of equating lack of pain with we are healed.
Yeah, and it can, you mentioned meat as an example. People feel that they, don't do well eating meat, or they feel heavy eating meat, or they can't break down meat. And as you were saying, maybe it's not the meat, maybe it's the person, or at least some imbalances in the person that doesn't enable them to eat what you might consider to be a species-specific diet, right?
Yeah.
But it almost goes the other way as well to a degree, particularly people with autoimmune conditions, they cut out all the plant-based foods and their symptoms go away.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, again, because it's a relatively new phenomenon in terms of in modern times, that people are eating purely animal-based diet and clearly getting good short-term benefits from that. I just think what would be really interesting is to, maybe in 10, 15 years' time, look back, and if there are still people that are continuing to eat that way, what kind of condition they're in. I'm just really interested. I don't have any, I'm not I'm not on any team. I just think whatever works for the person, it works for the person.
Yeah.
But in my experience, again, going through the process of what we call metabolic typing and getting people to monitor their own energy levels, their own satiety levels, their emotion levels after eating, helps people to fine tune what's right for them. And after 20 plus years of doing that, I'm still yet to find someone who's optimum at a purely vegetable based diet or at a purely animal based diet. Right? It's always somewhere in the middle, and they can be quite close to the extremes. Right? I mean, I'm pretty close to carnivore, where I feel like my best, but I know if I go pure carnivore, I don't feel quite as good. I've tried doing that, and again, I've had people. I mean, I've worked with a lot of vegetarians as well, and the more, let's just say, the more fat that they eat, the better they feel. And the question I've always got in my mind is, if they were willing to make that leap into eating animal-based foods, how much better potentially would they feel? And again, it's a question that you'll never know until they try, right? Because as I say, pun intended, the proof is always in the pudding, right?
Right on.
And until you try it, you don't know. Because people say to me, "Oh, well, tomato's good for me." So try it and see, test it and see, right?
Yeah, it's like becoming your own little scientist, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm also equally interested with a more like long-term hindsight about more like carnivore-based approaches. But in terms of like what we can presume is like it's quite a lot of iron, for example, and iron in excess is very like it's oxidative stress, basically. We know that, and especially for men, unless we fight and bleed, we don't have an easy way to get rid of iron.
Yeah.
So there is that, and like obviously you don't have much vitamin C. Like some people say, yeah, like raw liver has some, yeah, sure, but like not a ton of vitamin C, which we do need for many things, including like liver phase 2 detoxification and recycling glutathione, things like that. So we can speculate on what could happen, but again, we don't really know. I have found also that a nice sweet spot between the two has to be found for each individual. And what I've observed, and I fell prey to this early on in my health journey, is I had a belief, partly because I was influenced by what the government says, what tends to be recommended by the government, or just like a group, like a subgroup of influencers, which is like the more vegetables, the better. And that's actually when I felt the worst, is when I was eating a bunch of vegetables. So
yeah. I mean, I've mentioned this many times on the podcast before, but for the first 30 years of my life, I was constipated. I just didn't know, right? Because I had a bowel movement every day, I didn't understand you could still be constipated and have a bowel movement every day. The fact that it took 30 minutes each time probably should have rung alarm bells, but I didn't know any different, right?
Yeah.
And then when I found out my metabolic type and I started eating a predominantly animal-based with a small amount of plant-based foods, literally within a day, my bowel movements became what I now understand to be normal, right? But it's interesting what you say about iron as well, because I guess I'm a good case history for that, because again, yes, I eat a lot of animal-based foods, predominantly, ruminant animals. I do eat a little bit of chicken as well, and I eat a lot of eggs. But whenever I've done bloods, my iron levels are very high. And interestingly, the other thing as well is that as a protective mechanism, what can also happen if you've got high iron levels, it can also increase your sex hormone binding globulin, which then lowers your free testosterone. So I've got the testosterone, like total testosterone levels of like a 19-year-old, right? Even though I'm, more than almost triple that age. But my free testosterone is very low because my sex hormone binding globulin is high, which is probably because of my high iron levels. So the only thing I can do is donate blood as regularly as possible.
That's right.
But even that in the UK, it's very hard to do it often enough. You know?
Yeah, and if you get acupuncture, for example, you can't.
What's that?
Right.
Yeah.
Like if you get acupuncture treatment, they won't allow you to donate for like 3 or 6 months. I don't remember.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting situation when it comes to specific diets and the other thing, again, just to mention it as well, is that again, I know if I was to eat more vegetables, now this goes completely against the grain. If I eat more vegetables, more fiber, my bowel movements aren't as good. But yet, if you look at all the research would say, well, that's nonsense.
Yeah, you need like the 35 gram a day for a man of fiber to have a proper intake and proper bowel movements. Yeah.
But then again, if you speak to a carnivore, and again, I've had carnivores on this podcast, they don't eat any fiber at all, and they've got what you might consider a perfect bowel movements.
Yeah. Yeah, fiber helps with the bulk, especially, and it can help to sweep toxins and things like that, but it's not a de facto prerequisite to have a bowel movement. Like even if we look at the Inuits, for example, like traditionally at least, like ain't any vegetables over there. So
yeah. So would you say there are, or what do you think in terms of, are there any unconventional lifestyle factors that you consider important to healing? Hey Rebels, did you know I now produce an exclusive No Punches Pulled episode every month? These episodes feature controversial guests who aren't afraid to expose lies, share stories of being gaslit or cancelled, and provide real-world solutions for achieving optimal health and maintaining your freedom. These are the kind of episodes that got me cancelled back in 2022, booted off Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and even deplatformed from LinkedIn. But I'm still here. And these powerful episodes are available exclusive for subscribers only. For the price of just one takeaway coffee per month, you'll gain access to content the authorities don't want you to hear. By subscribing, you're not just supporting the Radical Health Rebel podcast, you're joining the fight for uncensored truth, education, and inspiration. It's easy to sign up. Just head to the show notes, click support the show, and follow their instructions. Prefer watching your podcasts? You can also subscribe on Substack by searching Radical Health Rebel. There you'll also receive weekly articles and more, all for the same low price. Let's rebel against censorship and the lies of mainstream media. Together, we can build a healthier, fairer, and freer world. Thanks for your support, and let's keep rebelling.
Well, if by unconventional you mean something that's not done by the masses, yeah, there are many, because unfortunately we live in a society where I like to describe it as we tend to normalize dysfunction. We tend to normalize what's not natural. And I think the first thing that comes to me is like, just go back to the sun. And going back to the sun is like, for example, when we are exposed to blue light after sunset, well, it keeps our body in like day mode, if you want, activity mode, and it prevents repair. So just that, like for most people, as far as I can tell, it's like no big deal. But when you understand circadian biology, it's like, oh, actually, you're slowing down every one of your repair processes, like literally hindering them by simply being exposed to blue light. So that's probably a big one. Obviously, fearing the sun, generally speaking, not just like being exposed to artificial light, but fearing the sun, and especially fearing the sun on the skin, is big. Because, like, here's what I explain to people: like, we tend to say that, yeah, you should avoid the sun, especially when it's like midday, basically. But when you understand that to make vitamin D, which most people equate sun with vitamin D, that's a good start. But what I usually say is like, yeah, vitamin D is maybe like 5% of the benefits of the sun. But we have to understand that in order to make vitamin D in the skin, which by the way, vitamin D is made from a derivative of cholesterol. So in other words, sunlight converts a derivative of cholesterol into vitamin D, which is called a vitamin, but it's more like a hormone. In order to make vitamin D, we need sunlight that's strong. If it's not strong, it's not working. So there are two criteria to make vitamin D. One is that there is UVB light. So not UVA, UVB. That's a subtype of UV light, which is only here when the sun is about 30 degrees above horizon. So meaning pretty high in the sky already, which is why, by the way, we don't have vitamin D in the winter because the sun is too low in the sky. And the second criteria is having a UV index of 3 or more. So in other words, if we fear intense sunlight, we cannot have vitamin D. We cannot make vitamin D. And vitamin D has many, many roles, including for immunity, for inflammation regulation, and it plays into gut health. We also know that, just for another example, UV light by itself, when it's like touching the skin, especially the abdomen, it will help regulate like the microbiome. Like just light can regulate the microbiome and promote beneficial species. So by being afraid of the sun, we are basically leaving some ammunition on the table, so to say, in terms of our healing potential. So to go back to your question, what are unconventional things that I would tend to recommend to promote gut healing? It would be embracing the sun intelligently and having a more mindful approach of artificial light. Because to me, if we look at how most people do things, we tend to protect ourselves of the only source of light that's natural, the sun, and we tend to like not really take precautions against artificial sources. And that's really stems from a profound misunderstanding of how, and again, like I say that with compassion because I did not know any better either before, but it stems from a big misunderstanding of what we call photobiology, or how light affects biology. So that's a big one. And yeah, I mean, I guess what's unconventional nowadays, just like drinking enough water between meals, but not during meals, right? Because if you drink water during a meal, it will dilute stomach acid and make your job harder. So just like sitting down and, chewing, so you don't need to drink water, and taking your time to eat. I know it's like surprise, but like that works. So these are the things that come to mind first.
Yeah, the first thing you mentioned was, not having artificial light after sundown. And, I think most people, if they came to visit me in the evening, would think I'm a bit weird because I don't have any artificial. Well, I say I don't have any artificial light. That's not technically true, but I have like Himalayan salt lamps, which is like a form of red light, and I'm still wearing my blue light blocking glasses. I think most people, if you visit their home in the evening time, all the lights are on and you can see everything. Sometimes if I've got my blue light blocking glasses on, I might even walk into something, right, in my home, right, because they do. Obviously, they're blocking the light, and there's little light anyway. But what for me is quite interesting with regards to sunlight as well, and again, I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast. So most people know, when I was young, I had quite severe acne, but I was also a cricketer. So in my teenage years and early 20s, I played cricket, and I was a bowler, and quite often my team would bat first, so I would be down the order in the batting. So I used to literally take my top off, be in a pair of shorts, and I would go and lay either somewhere, if we had a balcony in the changing room or by the side of the pitch, and I would literally be sunbathing for hours, and I would do that every Saturday, every Sunday. And my skin was the best it would ever be. It was during the summer months when I was playing cricket and there was lots of sunshine. And I've always been a bit of a sun worshipper. Now, again, we're told that if you spend too much time in the sun, it's going to make you look old. It's going to ruin your skin. You're going to get wrinkles. Well, if
I'm happy to clarify that, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And, again, I only have to look in the mirror and think, well, if that was true, I would look a lot older than I look, right? I mean, just the other week, someone thought I was 20 years younger than I actually am, right? So if someone,
Good job.
they were carrying a white stick and they had a Labrador, but we'll brush over that. But the point I'm making is that there must be more to it than that, right? And again, I don't use toxic sun creams or anything like that. I think the last time I even used organic sun cream was probably about 8 years ago, I think. And now I play tennis, so again, I'm out in the sun at the weekends for could be anywhere from 2 to 8 hours. Again, so if the sun was so bad, why am I seemingly only getting benefit from it? And I want to come back to the word you said, intelligent use of the sun, right? So when I hear people saying things like, you shouldn't go in the sun, it's a bit like saying you shouldn't exercise.
I have a great analogy for that. I would just let you continue. But the analogy I use is like, let's start with the assumption that there are car accidents happening. Like, we all know that. And so saying to avoid the sun would be like saying, well, please everybody stop driving so we stop having car accidents. Right? It's like, doesn't make any sense because it will paralyze the entire country. And it's like, it doesn't solve the issue once again.
Yeah. Yes. Again, using the exercise analogy, let's just take building muscle as an analogy, right? You go to the gym and you lift weights, let's just say to failure. And then over the next sort of 24, 48, 72 hours, those muscles heal. And next time you go to the gym, you're stronger, right? Simple analogy. But if you over-exercise, like if you're doing 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, or even 7 days a week, well, the muscles are going to atrophy. They're not going to grow. They're going to get smaller, right? Because it's too much stress. You're probably going to end up with joint pain, joint injuries. You might end up with torn muscles. You might end up with torn ligaments or tendons. And of course, if you spend too long in the sun, right, then of course, that's going to be a problem. Just like spending too much time in the gym lifting weights is going to be a problem. Now, again, because of what's being sprayed in the sky, I've not really seen much sun at all since last summer, right? And it shows my skin color. This is as pale as I go. So, okay, it's nice and sunny today, but it's, as we record this, it's the beginning of March. I could probably spend all day out in the sun. I probably wouldn't get burnt because of the time of year. But if I'm still this color in a month's time and I start playing tennis and, the sun's really bright, I'll probably get burnt if I play for 2 hours, right? So what would be the sensible thing to do? Play for half an hour or an hour, maybe. Or maybe, make sure I've got a hat on, or maybe I'll wear some organic sun cream, or maybe I'll, maybe use, I don't know, beef tallow or something, right?
It's like basically it's common sense, being sensible. And the only thing I will add, because this is obviously an excellent analogy that I also use to explain to people how to basically acclimate to the sun. And one of the mistakes we make as humans, generally speaking, is we tend to go out when it's warm only. And usually when it's warm, there is a lot of UV light, ultraviolet light. The only thing I will add, just so people can really understand the importance of it, is that when we are exposed to artificial light, so let's say we are indoors and exposed to a screen or a light bulb. So blue light is a proxy, or what we call a surrogate, to UV light. Why? Because in nature, there is no such thing as a high amount of blue light without a fairly high amount of UV light. Therefore, even if we are indoors, but we are exposed to artificial blue light, the brain believes that we are still exposed to UV light. Therefore, it does not kickstart the repair processes, right? And so the way I really simplify it, it's overly simplified, but it makes a point. It's that the more I'm exposed to artificial light, especially after sunset, the less I can tolerate the sun.
Interesting. Yeah. We've spoken a little bit about diet already, and another, I guess, fashionable, no, that's probably not the right word. Another thing that's discussed a
Trendy.
lot, right?
Trendy.
is fasting.
Yeah.
What's your view generally on fasting for gut health and for overall health?
Yeah. So with these things, this can be quite delicate because if we hear about the proponents of fasting or if we look at the research, we will find many biological markers that are improved. We'll see potentially benefits. But we need to ask ourselves the questions as always, which is this tool, fasting, appropriate for this person? And what we have to understand about fasting is like, again, just like exercise, it has benefits, but it's nonetheless a stressor. So it's a hormetic stressor, meaning that if we step back and we look at what is the body trying to do, really? Like the number one goal of any living organism, of any body into words, is to survive, right? Survival is the primary goal. And a big part of survival is to be fed. So the reason I'm saying this is that the moment we remove food intake, it stresses the body out. Now, again, this stress can potentially be beneficial. This is why we see all these studies revealing the benefits of fasting. But clinically, in practice, for most people, I have found that fasting is not the stress people need right now, for the most part. Meaning that, as I said in the beginning, many people are slightly overfed, meaning they eat a bit too much, but they are undernourished, meaning they don't have enough nutrients to run their physiology optimally. And so when you compound nutritional deficiencies and probably an already stressful lifestyle with fasting, which literally amplifies nutritional deficiencies because you are not eating anything, and that's also seen as a stressor for the body, usually it will not go well. Now, where it can be a little bit a slippery slope is that some people say they feel better when they fast. Now, there might be several reasons for that. And this is where interpretation is important. Because, again, if you, like me back in the days, feel heavy or bloated after a meal, whatever you eat, then obviously, if you don't eat, you don't feel bloated. So, like, oh, my symptoms are gone, so I feel better. So that's one reason why we may assume that fasting is a solution. Another thing is that when we fast, because we don't have an intake of glucose, and usually we run through our stored glycogen pretty fast from the liver and muscles, pretty quickly, the body will secrete cortisol to like mobilize all this energy basically so that we can still function. And the cortisol might feel like I'm alert, my mind is clear and things like that. And we can equate that with, oh, I feel better. But really, when we do these things too much, we again sweep the problem under the rug and keep doing something that's basically not solving the root cause. Like if we have digestive issues, it is not a fasting deficiency. It's usually something deeper. And the last thing I will mention specifically about intermittent fasting, which is usually done by not eating for 12, 14, 16 hours, like the 16-hour fasting window with 8-hour feeding window is the most popular. Usually the way it is done is by skipping breakfast. And from a circadian standpoint, this is the stupidest thing to do. Like we would need to actually skip dinner, not breakfast. So yeah, that's kind of my view on fasting. It is a tool, not a tool I recommend to most people, especially women that are not menopausal.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, what I would say I've found, because you'd probably say I intermittent fast now, but when I first started to do that, I actually did feel worse. And what I feel is like my own experience, my own personal experience, is that it takes a long time to be able to do that. And what you just explained really explains it, I guess. Like, if you're taking away food, your body will go into an automatic stress mode because it's thinking, well, hang on a minute, I'm starving here, because I normally eat at this time. So I remember I just started skipping breakfast on a Sunday, and I actually noticed I started to get bloated, and my normal bowel movement on a Sunday stopped happening. So I stopped doing it. I thought, well, that's not working for me. So I just went back to normal, and my bowel movements went back to normal, and I was not, there was no bloating. But slowly over time, I've got to a point now where I can eat 2 meals a day, and that's become my norm. But I think, as you was alluding to, again, it's almost like you've got to have a baseline level of health before you try and do that.
You're more like the outlier.
Yeah.
This thing. And also,
but I'm talking. It's probably took me from the time I started to now. It's probably like 8 years.
Yeah,
right. It's not
like also an outlier level of patience.
Yeah, for sure. Just moving on. How important do you think detoxification is to optimizing gut health?
Pretty important. Yeah. So I just think it's important to be clear on detoxification, meaning that obviously we don't want to keep waste products in the body, like the natural waste products from cellular respiration and obviously digestion. So that's number one. That's pretty obvious. And as I said in the beginning, because we unfortunately live in a world that's quite toxic, we don't want to keep these toxins either inside the body. So any of these toxins could cause issues with the body and with digestion. What I have found is that, so depending on the toxin, but it can increase the stress on the nervous system, and this will directly hamper digestion. Obviously, if we don't eliminate properly through the colon, as you said in the beginning, like earlier, we will end up with small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So this will lead to digestive issues. So for all these reasons, we want to make sure that the body, I like to use the word drain more than detox. We want to make sure that the body is able to drain toxins effectively. And for that, again, there are many, many protocols out there. It's quite a trendy topic, and it's very often, obviously there are professionals that are much more qualified than me, but the masses don't understand that things have to be done in order, and that you can take a supplement for improving whatever liver function, it's actually making you worse because you haven't done things in order. But overall, yes, like we want to make sure that the body is able to drain effectively so that it can just keep functioning properly, whether it's digestive or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I do take, I wouldn't say all clients, but often clients through a whole series of detox protocols, from, colon cleanses, liver gallbladder flushes, skin cleanses. And again, these probably aren't what most people think they are. Coffee enemas can be really good. And the use of binders, which again, I've recently done an episode on as well. For me, they're all really important factors. And again, keep talking about it today, but again, the things that are being sprayed in the sky, it's pretty impossible to avoid heavy metals now.
Yeah.
Which is why, again, I'm a big proponent of using binders because.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's where this is where we need a kind of artificial solution for an artificial problem, right? Because the body never evolved for this amount of heavy metal toxicity. And so obviously this is where binders can be helpful. But again, and I know you know that I'm saying this for the audience, but you can take all the binders you want, but if your nervous system, or like if you're stressed out and you don't have proper bowel movements, it will stay in your feces.
Yeah.
So it will stay in your body. So yes, like again, it's as always, it's also the theme of this episode is like strategic, like being intelligent with how we use. And the way you started listing your protocols, you started with like a colon cleanse. It's like exactly.
Yeah.
We should start with the colon because it's kind of the bottleneck of the drainage pathways.
Yeah.
So the example I gave is, let's say I take artichoke extract to support the liver in bile secretion and da. So, okay, the liver works better, let's assume. But if I'm still constipated, well, it will stay in my body and eventually it will be reabsorbed.
Yeah.
So it's not helpful.
Yeah.
I will give another example that will probably speak to people. If I do a lymphatic drainage, whether it's a specific dry brushing protocol or a specific massage, but it's my liver that's still backed up, well, I would just overwhelm the liver even more because it's not able to receive all of the lymph's toxins, right? And the third example I like to give is like, okay, let's say I do a colon cleanse, but I stop there. It's actually my liver that's backed up, and I'm not making any progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's certainly, again, as we know, there's a link between gut health and skin health, and
for sure.
I
talk a lot about it actually, because the way I try to, to make a point with people is I talk a lot about the implications for skin beauty and a flat stomach, right? So anything that creates inflammation in the gut will compromise the flat stomach look, and anything that causes inflammation in the gut or burdens the drainage pathways can end up showing up on the skin, as you really well know from your work on acne. And so yeah, obviously, like the skin is a secondary kind of drainage pathway, not necessarily the body's favorite, unless we sweat. But this is why things can show up on the skin when it's really happening, like the issue is really happening inside.
Yeah, I mean, what I found working with people with skin issues, not just acne, but eczema and even psoriasis, is that, when you start doing these detox protocols, the skin gets better. And again, another thing that I found, if I would, again, I'm going back a long time now, like to early 2000s, if I felt like I could feel a breakout coming on, I could literally just do a coffee enema and it would just disappear. So it wouldn't even develop fully. It would just go away.
Yeah.
And for those that maybe aren't aware, when you do a coffee enema, what it does, it stimulates. It's more the liver that it's actually stimulating. Yes, it stimulates the colon as well, but it's getting all the bile flowing through from the liver, and then obviously through the colon as well. Which to me just said, there's a definite connection between toxins, gut health, and the skin.
Yeah, and it's important to remind the listener that bile, it has multiple purposes. One of the things that bile does, which, like if we go back to the anatomy, so the liver secretes bile, and then for the digestive purposes, the bile is stored in the gallbladder to be released when kind of chyme, so the kind of broth from the stomach enters the small intestine. So one of the things that bile does is it makes the things coming out of the stomach less acidic. Otherwise, it would burn inside the intestines. But it also emulsifies fats. So it improves fat absorption, basically. It allows the pancreatic enzyme lipase to do its magic. But also what bile does in this is why it's relevant to what you just said, Lee, is that it helps, like bile contains the toxins that are filtered from the liver to be eliminated by the colon. So this is while improving bile flow, not only can help with fat-soluble vitamin deficiencies, but also with detox and elimination.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got one more question for you. It's just a small one.
Okay.
So
just a small one.
As many people be aware, I've spoken to many guests on this show about emotions and how they can affect the gut and overall health. What's your view on emotions affecting gut health?
Um, yes, that's the short answer. Now, obviously, like for example, if we are to go on the first date or speak in front of an audience and we are not comfortable with that or whatever, we tend to have the sweaty palms that we are familiar with. We tend to have the heart racing, and we can have uh, many people experience diarrhea. So the reason I'm bringing this example up is that we have pretty much all experienced um, digestion related symptoms associated with emotions. Now, the issue is not just the passing anxiety before a date or whatever. The issue comes when the emotions are not felt and therefore repressed. And it ties back to anxiety and mental health, generally speaking. But for example, Chinese medicine illustrates really well how some emotions are affecting different organs. And for example, the colon, which we have spoken about multiple times, the colon can be affected by the difficulty of letting go, by mental rigidity, which, hello, that's me. It could be by difficulty, digesting or processing past experiences or past relationships. So obviously, emotions play a role, and they can very much affect the state of the nervous system, right? Um, One of the reasons why people are stressed out most of the time is really because they are not able to sit with the emotions being generated by the present moment. Like, for example, let's say that some people get stressed out because they are stuck in traffic. Um, the reason they are stressed out is because they are not able to feel the emotion that's underneath it. And what's the emotion underneath it? Is like, well, they already assume that if I'm late, I would get maybe like someone will make a comment about it at work, and I will potentially compromise my employment and lose my job and da 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 da. So basically, the emotions that's underneath the stressful situation is fear. And because we've never been taught how to deal with emotions, we avoid them, and this creates this anxiety, this mental agitation, this stressful state. So yeah, basically, we all of that to say it does affect the gut, whether energetically we could call it, as Chinese medicine shows, when it's trapped in the body. Same like anger, frustration, it's more like the liver, gallbladder. Impatience, it's a gallbladder. So it might impair our ability to digest fats or detoxify, or more like through the nervous system, which is that our inability to deal with our emotions leads to a heightened state of psychological stress, which will impair digestion. So, for all these reasons, yeah, like emotions need to be addressed for gut issues. But the way I go about it is quite in a methodical way, which is that I like to cover the basics first that you have mentioned in the beginning, like the 6 foundational principles, even though it includes the mind. But like, let's make sure that you chew your food, that you drink enough water, that you at least have the nutrients in your plate to at least give a chance to your body to have what it needs. And just cover the basics. And depending on how the symptoms evolve, if you're feeling 99% better, cool. We maybe don't need to do like a thorough investigation on your emotional state. But if it's like 30% better and you're still whatever constipated, then okay, let's move on to the next level of investigation, which could be emotional.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I find with any aspects of health, so I kind of I look at it as 4 different areas. So one area is movement, whether that's corrective exercise, whether that's strength and conditioning, whether that's what we call work-in exercise, like zone exercises.
Tai Chi, Qigong.
Yeah. Another aspect is nutrition, lifestyle, functional medicine. The third aspect is manual therapy, so sports massage, and many people know I use active release techniques as well. Then the fourth aspect is emotions. So I see that for me, they're the 4 areas that I work on with people, and emotions is a whole section on its own. Which,
for sure.
is absolutely crucial. And it's rarely I come across someone where emotions isn't part of the root cause of the problem.
Oh, for sure.
But
yeah, it's kind of unrealistic. Like the example I gave was kind of fictitious.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
And the way I like to approach it is I always start with some kind of education about what emotions are and how to actually like feel them, at least in the moment. And then, like maybe refer out or give resources to like look into the stuck emotions in the body. But yeah, for sure, like that's part of the of the protocol.
But I kind of follow a similar, let's call it, sequence to you as well. Let's get those 6 foundations in place, and if they get the job done, we don't even need to go there necessarily.
No.
There might be the odd client where it's just so obvious that, I'll say from day one, we really need to work on this at the same time.
Yeah, I've seen people that are like so rushed all the time. They are like, they can't sit still. They are always freaking out for nothing. It's like, okay, I think we actually need to start with the, like, what's the emotion there? Like, you need to feel something, because like otherwise they won't even be able to, like, even if you gave them the foundational program, that would freak them out even more. It's like, okay, like in this case, like let's start with the obvious emotion that's going on here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Robin, this has been a really, really great chat, but what's next for you?
Yeah, so basically I'm growing my practice in the south of France. So for people who haven't picked up, I have a French accent. I'm trying to hide it, but to conceal it. But so yeah, slowly growing my practice, doing more and more public speaking, maybe soon in English as well, so I can post it for my English audience. And like in the process of creating more and more programs that I can share with people. And as I briefly mentioned, I'm focusing a lot on like flattening the stomach and improving skin health, because it's what matters to many people. But doing so in a way that actually honors health and puts health first, and actually the aesthetics come after that, and not like they are not at odds, basically. So currently working on that. I have a growing YouTube channel as well. Sorry, it's mostly in French. But yeah, that's basically what I'm focusing on nowadays. And maybe some retreats coming up as well.
Cool. Awesome. And where can people find you online?
So I guess the best place would be Instagram. So I guess you will put it in the show notes, but it's at robin.malmasson. So first name dot last name. It's in French, but even if you send me a text in English, I will read it, understand it, and probably respond in English if I'm kind. So yeah, that's the best place to find me.
Awesome, great stuff. So Robin, merci beaucoup for coming on the show.
Merci à toi. Thank you, Lee.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
So that's all from Robin and me for this week. But don't forget to join me same time, same place next week on the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to give the show a rating and a review, and I'll see you next time.